Happy to be here with Jon Taylor again. And Jon, what do you have for a topic for us this week?
So I think this is a revisiting a topic I did, I don't know how long ago, but I'm pretty sure I talked about fairness in one of these. I want to say more about fairness. I recently got to spend half a week with Stan and Tracy Tatkin in
Oh, great.
Calabasas, and we actually got to watch recordings with the permission of Stan's clients of therapy sessions he did with couples, and he talked to us about what was on his mind when he did certain things. And so this comes hot on the heels of hearing Stan talk about the role of fairness in relationships, and then backtracking that on my current caseload and the couples that I work with through consultations and intensives and things like that. And also just from an individual in recovery standpoint. Um, so I'm going to start with the premise today that when it comes to trying to set your relationship world right after betrayal and D-Day and all that, um, don't worry about anything that's not fairness until you have fairness locked down. And here's why. And fairness needs to be understood, internalized, and functioning. It is the gluiest part of relationships. Anything else you look at, do we love each other? Even are we honest with each other? Do we do things that hurt each other? Don't get me wrong, those are important, but someone who treats you fairly and who you treat fairly, like that is where a strong relationship gets forged. And you even see that. So I have the privilege of having two toddlers. It's a privilege, I have to remind myself. And you can see when they're getting along, they are concerned with fairness with each other. The 3-year-old will say to her little brother, I'm eating this, you should have some of this. And she doesn't give him as much as she gives herself. But that's not always what fairness is about. This token, like, here, have a bite of this. He is all hers. And the little boy, our little boy who's 2, he is a fruit snack head. In fact, I think his insides are just one big fruit snack at this point. And every time he goes to the cabinet, he calls his big sister E because he can't say her full name, but he will tell me when I hand him a fruit snack, 1E, which means one for E2, and he'll take it to her and just they're both so happy, and she'll say, "Oh, thanks," and sometimes there's a hug and a kiss. Um, Toddlers understand fairness. Toddlers feel when fairness is happening when it's not. So this is a good idea to focus on fairness. Number one, because all of us have a orientation to that, and we have for a long, long time. It doesn't mean we're good at doing it, but the feeling of is this fair or not, that's a pretty easy one to you'll get a lot of alignment. Most people will respond to a situation that's unfair in the same way, and they may even have there's a high probability they'll have the same commentary on what's fair and what's not. So it's a good idea to start with fairness because it's foundational. It glues us together. I was working with a couple a while ago, and my goal of the session was to get them to understand how important fairness was. And it was about the 5th time I said the word. Wife turns to me and she says, "Life isn't fair, so quit telling us this fairy tale that we should make this fair." And I said, "That's true. The world out there is not offering you true fairness, and they don't care about it. I want you to turn to each other and say something." And so one at a time, I had them say to each other, "Sorry, tough crap. Hope you can figure it out." And it wasn't about anything specifically. They just said that to each other. And I said, "How does that feel?" And they said, "That sucks." And I said, "Why?" And she had to concede, "Well, that doesn't feel fair." I said, "Well, I thought the world wasn't fair." And she's like, "Yeah, but this should be." And I said, "You're right. It should be." So you should focus on fairness because at a foundational level, if your relationship is not concerned with giving each other something better than what's on offer out there, what are we doing here? This is a lot of work. This is hard. It's a big risk. And if we're not concerned with giving each other better than what we could get out there, it's a lot of work for, I would say, nothing. Because you could walk down the street and have your neighbor treat you unfairly. And you don't have to pick up after their socks or listen to them chew in an annoying way. So I'm sorry, tough crap. Hope you figure it out. It doesn't fly in an intimate relationship. We have this instinctive sense. This should be about something more. Again, we have an innate sense of fairness when we're small. And that sense of fairness is based on a subjective reality, which actually is really important here because in a relationship, especially when it comes to fairness, if both parties are not saying feels fair, then it's not fair. Because fairness is subjective, justice is objective. So just imagine what happens in a relationship. What happens to you when you're with somebody who is really concerned that you feel justly dealt with and you feel the same? You like each other a lot. You trust this person. And that's not even like we've taken big risks together. That's just this person looks out for me. As long as you can get over the part of you that says fairness we could put on a spreadsheet. Fairness is objective, not subjective. So to illustrate this again, my toddlers, I made breakfast burritos for the first day of school about a week ago. And we put food on the toddler's plate because it's nice, not because they eat it. I don't know how they survive. Oh, it's fruit snacks. That's how they survive. Um, so I make one burrito and I cut it in half. And I was really paying attention because I knew, again, these kids who instinctively know what fairness is, they'd look at it and they could see inequity. So I serve up the burritos, and my 3-year-old says, he has more than me. And my instinct is to argue with her. No, it's not. Look, we could line them up. And I said, what does he have more of? And she said, he has more sausage than me. So I go to the pan of sausage and I put a little more on her plate. And she says, thank you. And I'm thinking, like, I build burritos this way. It's evenly distributed. Like, yeah, maybe if we weighed it, but you're not going to look at that and say, but it was this subjective feeling that doesn't feel fair. And I could put an effort towards her, and she says, that's great, we're even. So it's good to practice, and it's good to get your mind around that fairness is not about what I think is fair for you. Fairness is about what you think is fair for you. And again, if I show you that I'm concerned with what you think is fair for you, you have an ally, you have a friend. That's loyalty that matters. We do need so while fairness is almost inborn in us, nobody has to teach us that fairness is a thing or not. We come across it. We do need to work on our perception of. We need to work on considering whether or not our partner feels fairly dealt with. So that's the adult part of fairness. Did I get what I want? Did I get what I need? That's the child version of fairness. We all know what that feels like. The adult version is, yes, I need to be concerned with what I want and need, and I need to think in terms of, do you feel like you're getting what you wanted? So you notice how this starts to challenge a relationship, especially early on in recovery. Common thing that I see, the person who's done the betraying may say, I don't want to tell you everything. In fact, I don't think that I should. I think that would be bad for you. It'd be uncomfortable for me. I don't think that I should. You put that through the fairness goes both ways machine, and it starts to look really different. Sure, it might hurt for me to tell you everything. Sure, it might put me in a bad light. It may even make you leave this relationship. But do we have a fair relationship if both of us don't know everything we want to know, everything we need to know about this relationship? My opinion about what you need to know doesn't matter at all compared to your opinion about what you need to know. And in that way, when you look at that very early recovery common experience, you put it through the lens of fairness, there's only two options. One is whether I feel ready or not, I got to get ready to tell you everything because that's the only fair thing. So I have to develop an internal infrastructure to support fairness because I'm behind. Or I have to look you in the eye and say, no, I'm not concerned with fairness in this relationship. That's what you're signing up for. And if I say I'm not concerned with fairness in this relationship, it's not fair for me to expect that you will be concerned with fairness in this relationship. So here we are. We're not concerned with doing with each other what is fair. So what are we doing together? Those are the only two options when you think about fairness. If you aren't committed to fairness and you don't strive to make it happen, you will be a problem in most any relationship with any amount of closeness. Because again, nobody has to teach us what's fair and what's not. Sometimes we need to get reminded. I was with my toddlers the other day. We were picking up a new family car, and we're in the waiting room while they're preparing our car, and they had toys and snacks and stuff like that. And for a while, we were the only family in there, and the toddlers thought it was great to have some toys. And then this family comes in with a little girl who's probably about my daughter's age, and she sits down at the table and she starts playing with these toys that my kids had not been playing with. My daughter turns to me and she said, "She's playing with my toys." And I said, "Those aren't your toys. They're here for everybody." And I said, "You could go share with her." And she was like, "Oh, there's a little bunny figure that turn it one way, it looks like a duck. You turn it another way, it looks like a bunny." And I see her over there and she's showing her, she says, "See, bunny, duck, bunny, duck." So you might need a reminder that fairness and sharing is important. But again, that sense of all I had to say to her was, "No, those aren't yours, and it's not fair for you to take them. They're here for everybody." Oh, this is how you play with them then. So you'll be a problem in your relationships if you don't think that's important or you don't challenge yourself to think that way. I'm not saying that it's easy to act that way. It is pretty easy to think that way because you only have to imagine, how do I feel and how would I feel if I was on the other end of this? That's pretty easy. It's not complicated. It's often hard to come up with solutions that both of us feel like are fair, but if we're committed to that, if we say this isn't resolved until we both feel like it's fair, we'll get there eventually. We'll get creative enough at some point that we can come up with it. It just might take more time than we might be comfortable with right now. Getting to fairness takes work, and it often takes at least a few revisions to get to a solution or an arrangement that feels fair. So with fairness as a compass point, the struggle we have to figure out what is fair and does this feel good, it doesn't necessarily become easier, but it starts to make sense. Yeah, we're going to hate whatever solution we come up with if both of us don't feel like this is good for me. I feel justly dealt with. So while this is annoying that we're on our fifth round now of negotiation, hopefully we're getting better at thinking, and maybe hopefully by round 5, I'm not offering any suggestions that I don't think that you would be on board with in the first place. Or I don't think I could convince you to be on board with in the first place easily. With a simple, "Well, have you thought about?" "Oh, no, I hadn't." "No, that makes sense." So it usually takes a few revisions, and couples in early recovery, you need successes. You need things that are like, "Yes, we worked on this, it's getting better." I would submit fairness production early on is an easier place to start than almost anything. So what that would look like is, let's say your spouse figures out, or they find out your infidelity or your porn use, and they say, "I don't want you sleeping in the bed, you're on the couch." And you hate that because your bed is comfortable, and you don't sleep well on the couch, and it's humiliating. Common thing. I don't think anybody's wrong for having their feelings there. Start looking at that through the lens of fairness. This person just found out that they can't trust you. How do you think they're going to sleep next to someone who maybe has used porn in bed at night, or has slept around, or whatever that is? "Oh, okay, yeah, maybe her body or his body can't calm down when I'm here." Yeah, that's not fair to take both the trust and fidelity of this relationship and their ability to sleep. I'm going to be uncomfortable for a bit. I made choices. Literally, I made my bed, I made my couch, now I get to lie in it. That's fair. That's fair. We can do that. And also, when couples reach those agreements together, when you both see the wisdom in it and you both get behind it, that's a success for your relationship. We are acting in concert with something that is supportive of our relationship. No one should feel unsafe here. Everybody should be able to sleep at a minimum. So we arrange ourselves to make that happen. You need those successes early on. Fairness is an easier place to start. And there's no ambiguity when you get there. You either feel it or you don't. And if you're saying, well, I guess that kind of feels fair, then it's not fair. Like, just go back to the drawing board, make it better. See what else you need to add to that. So fairness is a wise place to start early on in recovery because it's more intuitive than this other stuff you got to learn down the road. A lack of fairness is a pretty good way to understand intimate betrayal. I knew things that you didn't. I made choices that affect you that you didn't get to be a part of. Not fair. Trust broken. It's also a good way to understand reestablishing or conceptualizing repair. This is about making it fair again. So I should give you information that you should have known if you want it. That's fair. That's the only thing that's fair. In fact, if I wanted to have a different romantic experience than I was having with you, the only fair thing would be to come to you and say, I want something different than this. Would you be okay with that? That's the only fair way to start that. Not doing it in secret, not telling yourself it's not that. The only fair way is to look to the person you've committed to and say, this is what I want. This is what I think about doing. Are you okay with that? Who does the lifting early on? So I broke it, I fix it. I lied. Yeah, it's the burden is on me to prove the truth because I just showed you that I would hide things and I would lie and I would distort. And again, I see couples fight all the time early in recovery. Well, why do I have to blink and my partner does not have to? Again, just think about fairness and a large story. And also if it comes to like password sharing or anything like that, do we want a marriage going forward where we don't share our passwords? I couldn't get on your phone and make a call when I needed to. So something to think about. So it may not just be, I have to do this because I'm punished. It may be, we have a new policy. We have access to each other's phone because that feels fair. That feels right. We're both paying for this. We both rely on knowing what's going on. Like, let's just share that from going forward. The need for clear boundaries and requests. So for the person who's been betrayed, while it's very understandable that it's just this searing hot pain in your heart, is it fair for you and for your partner that you go on indefinitely with that undifferentiated pain, not being able to say, I need this specifically? You're going to have to start doing this, not that. I would submit that's not fair to go on with that indefinitely. It does take work again to get there, to be able to say to your partner, I'm going to need you to change jobs. I cannot be safe with the job that you're in because you've cheated with two of your coworkers there. New job, new field. I know that I cannot feel safe without that. Maybe hard what you're asking for. Is it fair to make it clear what you are needing, what you know you need? Absolutely. It's not fair if you don't. So again, fairness is a recovery and reestablishment of trust is a complicated issue. I'm not saying fairness explains it all. It's a good place to start with understanding what broke and how we fix it. And just one last note here. When it comes to any secure functioning principle or behavior in our relationship, pain that prevents us or an emotional inability to do that for now is not an excuse to not be trying and working towards that. Because secure functioning relationships, relationships that we like to be a part of and feel good, are not built on intention or principle alone. They're built on here's what we do. So another good reason to focus on fairness early on is because whether you've done the betraying or you've been betrayed, a focus on a commitment to fairness is going to push you to grow in the ways that you need to grow to heal from this. For an addict, I really think about myself, not my partner and my relationship. Well, if I focus on fairness and I say fairness is important, I'm challenging myself there. Guess who I have to start figuring out how to think about? and that's no longer under this framework of, well, I owe this person, which can be difficult for a lot of people. That can almost feel humiliating. Again, not an excuse, just a descriptor of some feelings. When I focus on fairness, there's a big idea I can get on board with. Almost no heartburn for me. I know that's a good idea. Feels like a good idea to me. Looks like a good idea for you too. So you want a relationship. If you want a good relationship, you have to be willing to be mature enough to build that relationship and sustain it. That doesn't just come because we want it. I've said this before on this, that it's cruel in our design. We need relationships, but our instincts are terrible for intimate relationships. You can't just go on what you feel like doing. You have to be intentional. And fairness is a really good place to start with becoming intentional about your relationship. So there's our revisit to fairness.
Great stuff. I was laughing because I think on an earlier webinar yet this week, I referred again to Dr. Stan's podcast with Dr. Rob. I refer to it often from January of 2019, the We Do, and it is, you know, like all of the stuff you're talking about, and I've wrote lots of notes, of course, but you know, well, you know, I can either show up and look at what's fair, or I can go, yeah, I'm not concerned about fairness, you know, whatever. But like in a healthy relationship, you know, if we are working together, you know, we individually are healthier, happier. We get all these great things. In an unhealthy relationship where it's, well, I don't care about you, I just care about me, we're not, you know. And so like we should be, you know, striving for that because it's good for us individually as well. When you talked about making it fair again, and I thought, I wonder, like I was like the again I got stuck on, because I thought like in a relationship where there's been infidelity, etc., throughout the entire marriage, there was never fairness. And so you're looking at creating a new path that, you know, that will be fair. And I was wondering, when you were talking about this, how often like how often are you getting resistance? I know it's the easier thing, you know, to navigate, but I bet you get some pretty heavy resistance, you know, like even with the
Oh,
passwords.
every time, because um, I expect when couples come to my office that they have growing to do. I mean, you could even say growing up, and I hate to put it that way, because it's not just, not this tis tis you're a child. Like, growing up is hard, and not everybody, or I'd say nobody on the planet, is given a chance to grow up in all the ways that they need to sustain the kind of relationship they want. So there's always resistance. But the thought came to me, Tammy, as you were talking, fairness is also important early on in recovery to focus on, because if you want to know, like, what am I supposed to be working on, make fairness your goal, and then notice how you struggle with it and work on the things that are barriers to you thinking and acting in a fair way all the time. In other words, the hurt parts of us, or the stuck parts of us, haven't been able to grow up all the way and to accept adult responsibility for adult relationships. Fairness will get you there faster than almost anything else. You want motivation to stay sober. I remember one guy that I worked with, and this was before I started working with Stan, training with Stan. Um, his spouse turned to him and said, "I don't know, this is going to sound stupid, but it just, your addiction, you relapsing, you using porn like that, it just doesn't feel fair to me." And he talked for years after that about what a big moment that was, and recognizing, like, yeah, all the case she'd made for it before was just like, I don't know, it didn't click. But when she said it's not fair, like, I got that, I understood, and I could see, like, yeah, that's not fair. So there's resistance to it because it's hard. There's resistance to it because there's some stuck or immature or unable part of us that's saying, I mean, about our whole, yeah, but that's hard. Yeah, but that's hard. And what we recognize as adults in relationship is, I get what I pay for. This is work. And if I'm not working, one way I put it, if you're not driving, you can't be complaining. No backseat drivers in relationships.
Yeah,
So
yeah. I
there's
was
always
thinking,
resistance, but there should be, because you have to grow up to get a better relationship.
and we would welcome questions. Type them in the Q&A, please. But when you're talking about the toddlers in the car dealership, and I thought an addict's going to go, no, they're all mine, and and you having the ability to go, look, you can share, and having your toddler show up and go, oh yeah, great, I can, and look at the connectedness. I was like, that's the difference. I could sit here by myself and play with my toys, or I can be connected, like, she made a new friend, and she had fun, and like, that's a different memory than just sitting here alone and lonely with my toys and me. So so it changes everything, and I was, I was thinking, even in the example you were just using about fairness, I'm not being fair to myself if I'm, like, it's as simple as that. I am not being fair to myself if I am, and keeping myself away from the really meaningful things in life, and I kind of wonder if we would pay attention to that as, like, not only am I not being fair to a partner or another person, because fairness is really, that, like you said, it's a toddler to a toddler, it is about everything. And if we're showing up and being kind and fair, we live differently, and much more, contented, connected, all of the good things in life, and not that life is, like your one client said, life isn't fair. No, life is not fair. And we want not to be alone in this journey.
Yeah, well said.
So there was something, like you also, I circled curious. It's like, like, if you're being curious, like, as you're navigating this process, if you're being curious about, what does not feel fair to you in this, like, I forgot which part you said, but I was like, oh, you're just being curious. Like, okay, what's not working as well? Like, you want, everyone to buy in. But like you're also talking about, it's not going to feel like I got my entire way if we're navigating it on a relationship. If I'm putting the relationship first, I'm actually getting my way. It's just not, the individual all about me way.
Yeah, it's a better way to get your way because your partner gets what they want too. And I know for me, often, like, my first bus I take for getting my way is not always the best thing for me. And I have grown to appreciate, like, running into this wall with my relationship or my partner's needs and saying, oh, I got to rethink that. And oftentimes when I'm thinking in a relational way, what works for me and what works for you, often what I'm getting is better than my first idea anyway. If for nothing else, my partner's not resentful and angry about what we just agreed to. And it's not as easy as, like, happy wife or happy husband, happy life, but this idea of, like, if I can take stress and resentment off your plate and make it so that you don't have to deal with that, like, I don't know if you guys have noticed, but people under stress and a lot of resentment aren't fun to be in a relationship with. And so focusing on fairness gets me a better partner, which we all deserve and we all want anyway.
I was thinking, it's like, rowing the boat. If we're rowing in the same direction, rather than, we each have an oar and I'm going this way and you're going that way,
Mhm.
like, we're not going to get anywhere, but if we're going, like, and you know what, the boat goes better if we're both paddling in the same direction. So yeah, just, like, there's so much good stuff. I love that your toddlers, I mean, aren't they just amazing that they get to teach us so many life lessons,
Oh my
including
gosh.
patience sometimes.
Right. Right.
So any questions about, I did like to, I underlined, how would I feel? And I think it's like, that's a full stop. Like, if the shoe was on the other foot, how would I feel if, and I had a conversation not too long ago with the guys that are in our residential treatment program, and we were talking about empathy, because that's kind of another one where it's a little bit of a struggle. But I shared a scenario, and which is a typical addict thing, and I said, now let's flip it. If your partner had done those things, how would you feel? And immediately they were like, oh my gosh, I'd hate it. Yeah, yeah,
Mhm.
yeah, it isn't fair. So we have some questions. Okay. The first one is, my essay mother enmeshed man partner seems to superimpose his mother on me an alarming large percentage of the time, to the point that in our conversation is that if our conversation is recorded by a home camera or front of couples therapists, it is drastically different than what is said. Kind, I think, kind this reflected back as cruel and controlling. Normal relationship behavior seems impossible for him because he feels criticized, controlled, punished, and engulfed. He doesn't see his relationship with his mom as being that bad. You can help. Well, you can address this. You can't fix this.
I can make an attempt.
Yeah.
So my first comment here, and I see this a lot with, more issues than just mother enmeshment, but if your partner's not already suspecting that their relationship with their mother might be off, you're not going to score a lot of points saying this is all about your relationship with your mother. You're enmeshed, and that's not fair. It's not fair that we can't just deal with things as they are. Be open to feedback. But also, if we are attempting the same thing over and over again and expecting a different response from our partner, that's not fair either. So in these situations, I'll find when partners of enmeshed men read Married to Mom or Silently Seduced, or they see the webinars or whatever, they feel relieved. Here's the name, this is what it is, and then they almost become missionaries for the cause. And my first convert has to be my my enmeshed partner. The seeing the childhood for the trauma that it is, that's a big ask. That's a big move for someone who's in this position. Reinterpreting the care from mother as manipulation and control is a hard corner to turn. So as you keep approaching this, here's a couple things that I would try rather than the diagnostic route. You are enmeshed with your mother. First and foremost, I would try, if you've read Married to Mom or you watched the webinar, I would try this with your spouse. Hey, I watched this and I really resonated with what it was talking about here. The role that our families can play in our marriage. Now, your partner may begin to sniff this a mile away because you probably had a lot of conversations with them, but I would say, all I'm asking is I'd like you to take a look so that we can have an intelligent conversation between the two of us. Again, what's fair if we're going to debate something? Is it fair to debate something using totally different pools of information? No, not at all. That's not fair. Nobody feels good about that. If you really want to get somewhere on an issue, instead of trying to prove that you're right because you have the right information, share your analysis from the same pool of information. Let's talk about that. So, saying to your partner, I'd like you to read this, and then let's talk about it. Or I'd like you to see a therapist and talk about this, and then let's come back together and see what we're seeing here, because I'm feeling displaced by your mother, whether it's your anger towards her or it's your expectation or that controlling, that criticism. I don't feel like I've earned that. That doesn't feel fair to me. I also don't think it's fair to you to just twist your arm and say, here's what's wrong with you, accept that whole hog. I'm asking you to do the work. I'm asking you to look at this and tell me what you think. That generally, it may not work as fast, but I think it works better when your partner has a chance to get on board for their own purposes, not because again, with enmeshed people, they're used to being controlled and manipulated and all that. So the more you push on the you're enmeshed narrative, the more they're going to feel controlled and manipulated. So you neutralize, you level the playing field by, I read this thing that I really resonated with. I'd like you to take a look so we could discuss it. That's what I said. I didn't see a specific question in that.
No, and I'm pondering. I'm going to put this out there, and I so you can tell me different. But I was like, because I almost go to this, gosh, it must be so difficult to feel controlled. I wonder if you're willing to to look at, this webinar or read this book, from that standpoint of like, like, and I don't want it to feel manipulative, but like I'm reading this, I'm like, it must be difficult at every thing to feel like I'm being controlled, I'm being whatever. But if I showed up with a, gosh, Jon, like it must be so difficult that when we're having, this conversation, you feel like it's controlling. And so I'm wondering about this, kind of from a curious place. Any thoughts on any of that?
Yeah, again, think from a fairness perspective in your relationship. I'm looking at all the ways to resolve this because I hear you say that I do this over and over again. And you can only say this if it's true. I'm giving it as good a faith as effort as I can. I'm trying not to do any of those things with you. And I kind of admit to you, honey, I feel like I'm in a bit of a loss because I feel like it doesn't matter whether I'm doing that or not.
Mm.
It seems like it's hard for you to not feel that, and no judgment on my part. So I'm interested in your relief just as much as you are. I think we have to work on multiple ways to do this. I'll keep working on my side of the street. Could you look at this? Because I think it has some answers, or it has some validity for us. I want to shove it down your throat, but I'd be curious. Give it a read, and I want to know what you think about it.
Yeah.
And if your enmeshed partner is watching this, I'll say when you read Married to Mom or you watch the webinars, you'll probably feel angry or sick if that's your story, and then you'll feel guilty for feeling angry or sick. So if that's you, that your initial response is, oh my gosh. And then it's like, no, like that can't be me. That's trying to erase the guilt. Probably talking about you. But that's not my mom. She's not that bad. This is probably talking about you.
Well, and I want to get, because I know the mother and mesh men work, and it's like all of this stuff in addiction. If we're willing to do the work, it shifts things in a good way. Like, we can show up for our true selves, not as a shadow of someone else, not,
Yeah.
so,
Yeah.
so it's challenging. And I think, and you've shared this before too, but particularly with the parental enmeshment, that's such old ties and behaviors. It's hard to extricate.
I'll plug here too our workshop for partners of enmeshed men. The main thing we focus on that the technical term for it is enactment, which is my unresolved family business has a way of getting played out in our family of creation, and you end up playing the role that was most problematic for me. That's not like we don't make that decision. Like that's just when people get together. We have a high tendency to do that. So a big focus in the partners workshop is how to avoid the reenactment, how to stay out of that role as the angry or demanding or criticizing mother, which, by the way, if you've been married to this person for a while and they're giving you nothing, you're going to get angry and you're going to get demanding. And it's not about ignoring those feelings. It's about being able to have those feelings and process them and get better from your relationship without crossing lines into that demanding, angry parent figure that your partner has such a struggle with. And that's good for both of you, right? You don't want to play that role, and it's really easy for you to play that role when you have an unresponsive partner. That can be another place to go with that situation. Is again in line of I'm going to work on my side of the street. I'm not going to assume that this is just all about your mother. Like, am I angry with you? Yeah. Do I have demands? Sure. Do I wish you would do what I want you to do? Yep. So let me figure out how to hold that in a way that triggers less of the profile for you. Because it's so easy. Like I said, it's such a natural human thing to just reenact relationships. We all fall into that without thinking.
Well, and even the patterns within the couple, I say it's the negative two step. You do this, I do this, you do this, I do this. And we're wearing ridges in the floor and
Yeah.
nothing's changing, and whether it's a fight or it's a pattern, whatever it is. And so until somebody says enough of this choreography, I'm gonna shift the dance step, and and the other person can follow along or not, but at least it starts to shift some things, because otherwise it's just over and over and over again. and nobody feels good about that. Like
No.
it's still always unresolved. We're just repeating.
Yeah.
Okay. So the next one is, this is from the addict. Is there a way to practice being fair as opposed to right? I've gotten in the habit of being right, and if I'm right, all is fair. But this has failed miserably. How can I learn to pause and think what's fair, not if I'm right or not?
And this person says that they're the addict.
Yeah.
I'm just smiling because that, like, I have learned that if I'm right, all is fair. I can so relate to that distortion, right? And again, that's the immature. There's the toddler way of looking at it. Well, if it's all right for me, it's all right for everybody. And toddlers run into that because they lack what we call theory of mind, which is the ability to consider that somebody else is different than me. They lack differentiation. Um, they lack that ability to recognize, like, we don't all see the world in the same way. So the very best way to do this is just go through your memory banks, the times where you have made sure that you are right. Think about the people that you did that to, because that's not a in front of, that's a I'm doing this to you. Imagine their face when we all finally established, yep, you're right. And my guess is that the majority of the people who you have made yourself right with are not saying, oh man, I'm so glad that we figured out that you're right and I'm a dunce. That feels so great to me. Thank you for relieving me of the burden of my wrongness. More often than not, you're going to see, or you're going to remember, that those people were hurt, or they were angry with you, or they felt unloved or unseen by you. And the best way to get to the bottom, like, I got to be fair, not right, is just look at what it costs you to be right. Is it worth it? And if it's really more important for you to be right than anything, again, maybe you're not mature enough to have the kind of relationships that you want to have. And that's no judgment. Being right feels awesome. It just doesn't play well with others if that's our primary thing. And so, yeah, line up on what it's costing you. Look at the relationships that it hurts to be right. And do it in your memory now. Try to do it as real time as possible in the future. Maybe I arrived at rightness and I'm thinking about it, and now I'm looking at my partner's face and they're devastated. Guess what starts to make sense? I'm really sorry. I'm being a butthead. You know what? Me being right doesn't matter. I feel terrible about how I just made you feel. Can we make that right? That's not fair. And the truth is, about being right, I mean, we have an entire profession built on this. Attorneys learn how to make themselves right. You use all sorts of justification, all blah, 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 blah. There's a reason why, and I know a lot of attorneys. I love a lot of attorneys. This is no, dig on the profession as a whole, but there's a reason why there's that stereotype of the heartless attorney who's only looking out for themselves, because that's kind of what being right is.
I was thinking
Concern
too
yourself
when
with. Yeah.
No, I was thinking when you say think of the other people's faces, I was like, think about when somebody did that to you. Like, like if you've had that done to you where they were right and they made a show of being right, like, yeah, it doesn't feel good to be on the receiving end. So even from that place, I I remember the saying when I saw this question, it was like, I can be right or I can be happy. I choose to be happy. Yeah,
Yeah.
and I know that saying, so that tells you that I've had to apply it to me. And I had a situation recently, and there was something that came out and I was right, and it wasn't like, it wasn't about me. Yes, I was right. It was absolutely because I saw the bigger good or the bigger harm, and so
Yeah.
I was keen on pursuing the right only because I saw the negative consequences to not just me. It was not about me. It was absolutely about this other situation. And so, like, I was kind of on a mission, but it was for something different.
Yeah.
And I don't care if anybody even knows, that I was right. That was not the point. It was about something else. So for me, I know for sure, I can be right or I can be happy. I would much rather be happy. But taking that little pause of going like, think this through. What's it going to cost? Would be, it's challenging, but slowing everything down for us
Yeah.
addicts really can help. Oh,
And
here's one
one
other thing.
more
Go
thing,
ahead. No, please.
I would say here, in the spirit of your recovery and amends, go back to people that you have prioritized rightness over fairness with and apologize to them. That was crappy. I imagine that's got to feel, I'm so sorry. You want to lock it in your mind that this isn't important anymore. Go eat crow over that in front of people that you've hurt, and you'll get that feeling real quick that, yeah, it's not worth it for me to do this anymore. There's a better way.
So a number of years ago, this is another time to phone a friend. There was something, and I was in the right. I absolutely was. And I phoned our mutual friend, Dr. Ken, who knew the other party as well. And I said, I'm thinking about doing, X, Y, and Z. And he said, you don't want, and I knew this, like I knew I didn't want to do this, but I needed a little moral support. He was like, you don't want to do this. And here's why. And he was right. He was right in that I didn't really want to do that. But it was like I was hell bent on being right with this person and showing him how right they were. But I had the good sense to phone a friend
Yeah.
and get it slowing everything down. So, but I took the pause, and I think the longer you're doing this stuff, the more we're not perfect, but we sure have a better opportunity to go. I get that little niggle in my gut, and it's going like, is this going to be, is this going to have good life choices? No. So we can do something different. Yeah. But Dr. Ken was like, no, you don't really want to do that. And I was like,
In
you're
the way only Ken
right.
Adams can say that.
Yeah. But he was real calm about it. No.
Yeah, no,
Yeah.
that's Ken.
Yeah. Okay. Thanks so much to both of you. Great topic. How can an essay in recovery, ninth step, and still not very empathetic a lot of the time, work on seeing things through the lens of fairness more consistently and quickly, or even proactively? I love this question. Are there exercises I or we can do? I think my character defects of self-centeredness and pride are getting in the way, and apparently on this, and I'm willing and surrendering them every day. Maybe I'm impatient, but I'm wondering if we can speed up the process. I think it's safe to say we're both grateful for. Thanks. This is great. And what I hear is lots of
Yeah.
willingness to keep trying.
The word that's jumping out to me there is proactively, and this is fantastic. If you're struggling with fairness overall, lack of empathy, um, you probably have events in your relationships that happen over and over and over and
Mm-hmm.
over again with the same result. So get proactive and think about it ahead of time. So we always run into this. My spouse and I over the last few months, we've been trying to get back to better self-care, and there's not like loads of time and resource for that. So we're having to get really creative. And we were running into this burnout at the end of the week problem with both of us. And my wife's preferred way, and it's good for her to deal with burnout, is she takes a long nap. I'm not much of a napper. I could probably use it, but my brain is broken in that way, and I can't sleep when it's not proper sleeping hours for the most part. So she liked to take a long nap on Sunday afternoons, and I would feel happy to cover the bases. I'm the parent on duty, usually getting food ready, cleaning stuff up, entertaining kids, that kind of stuff. I'm happy to do that. But I would leave the weekend more burned out than when I started. And then that would go into the next week's cycle. And so as we were looking at this, like, how are things going? How's it feeling? I said, I'm having a problem with how we do the weekend. Like, I'm not getting a lot of exercise. I'm not getting a lot of time to myself. Like, I need something there. So the thinking proactively about this is we created a policy. We created a goal that we're going for. We believe it's important for both of us to take care of ourselves. So we're looking at Sunday afternoon is the best time to do that. We generally don't have other commitments. Things are kind of low and slow at home. So what we came up with is between 11 and 2:30, she can sleep or do whatever she wants. And I'm on duty. From 2:30 to about 5 o'clock, I can go do whatever I want. Usually that's on a trail, on a bike if I can, and generally by myself. Sometimes if my older sons want to come with me, that's fine, and it works. So the working on that proactively, as part of that discussion, getting that going, we both had to think, how does this feel for my partner? And then we got this, we have the time slot set up. Here's what's expected. And we've had to hold each other to account on that several times since we started that. With summer and vacations and things like that, we get out of sync with that. So we were approaching a Sunday a few weeks ago, and I said, I'm going to go on a ride here. And she's like, whoa, wait a minute. Why do you get to do that? And I said, well, it's Sunday. We made that agreement. Oh, right. And I said, and you're getting your nap before that. She said, well, not if we do this or this or this. And I said, well, then you decide. If you want your nap, we won't do that stuff, and you can get your nap, and I'll get my ride, and that's a good weekend for us. We know that. So if you're struggling, it's good to start thinking proactively. Don't just try to take these as they come. Start thinking through, where do I usually have a problem? Think through the lens of fairness. What would be fair here? Make a plan, write it down. Best is you're making this plan with your partner, you're writing down your commitments, and then you hold each other accountable. It's like a brace for a broken leg. It will start straightening things out, but you have to stay connected to your commitment on that. You have to take the commitment seriously. And you'll notice those feelings will start to follow. Get the right action, and the feelings and beliefs will follow generally.
Well, and I love that you gave her a choice of like, well, we can do these things or you can take your nap, because otherwise, like, resentment happens, that, well, I didn't get to do what, and you still got to go for your ride. So I love that you are honoring both pieces of that, so that you both have what you need with a very busy family life and work life to navigate the week. Okay, last question. If my mother enmeshment partner is ready and willing to do the work, but doesn't see how he can come out of this subconscious state, what is the best way? He sees how his mother may be clouding his view of me, but has a hard time remembering and a hard time seeing how his relationship with his mother was hurtful. It feels like knee-jerk to him that I am the one being hurtful.
The workshop. And I don't mean to just shill that's what Dr. Adams has designed that for. It's the bringing to the consciousness what's subconscious. It's better thought of as, it's not a classroom, it's a ritual, moving from guilt and obligation into passion, purpose, and differentiation. And that's not something we learn, it's something we feel. And I'm starting a workshop this afternoon. I'm so excited to do that because we have this awesome process that does just that. Comes out of the unconscious state, starts putting choices in front of me. Many of the guys, if we're doing our job right and they're showing up committed, they're feeling free for the first time. So you can try a lot of other things, you can read and all that, but I have not found anything that is better designed than that workshop to get exactly what you're talking about done there. It needs maintenance after, but that's how you break free.
Okay, so I'm putting the overcoming enmeshment quickly so it's overcoming enmeshment. I'm putting that in the chat for everyone. You can quick link to that. You can also, if you just type in overcoming enmeshment in your browser, you'll see, and Jon's posted on as one of the team members, so you'll see him there and the resources. So, and yes, I remember Dr. Adams saying at one partner said afterwards, I feel like I have my husband, a man, back, for the first time. I can't even remember. It was an old quote, but like, it shifts things. It permits the men to find their individualization, individuality within, and you can choose the relationships. It isn't, I'm doing this because this is the pattern. So we are out of time. So thank you, Jon. Great to see you as always. Thanks for the topic and the content, and thanks for the questions, everyone. Bye.
Bye, everybody.